Hey, this is Gina Grad.
Hi, this is Teresa Strasser.
Hi, everyone. This is Mike Errico.
Hey there, this is Casey Cavalier.
I'm Rocky Rose.
And you are listening to The Jay Franze Show.
Lucky you.
Welcome to The Jay Franze Show, a behind-the-curtain look at the entertainment industry with insights you can't pay for and stories you've never heard. Now, here's your host, Jay Franze.
Well, hello, and welcome to the show. I am Jay Franze, and this is your backstage pass to the entertainment industry. This week, we get to talk with a couple of authors. We get to talk with Jay Watson and Kyle Wiltshire. We'll talk to them about the inspiration behind their latest book, The Dead Rock Stars, what their writing process was like, and we'll take a look at the role that humor plays in their writing. Now, these are two amazingly creative guys, and I can't wait to talk with them tonight. So if you would like to join in, comment, or fire off any questions, please head over to jayfranze.com. Now, let's get started. Jay, Kyle, my friends, how are you?
Doing great, man. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. A little chilly, but fantastic. Kyle, sir, how about you?
Doing great, man. And it's excited to be here with you guys. It is a little cold, not as cold as it has been, but still kind of cold tonight.
All right, well, we can't go on tonight complaining about that, so let's just go ahead and jump right in. Let's start with the inspiration. This is a unique concept of rock stars faking their deaths and becoming secret agents. So, Kyle, let's start with you. Can you give me a little background on it?
Sure, yeah. Jay and I, man, we've been friends since college, and oftentimes we would exchange ideas. We just love pop culture. We love movies and stories and, TV. And one day, I'd been chewing on this idea for a while, but I kind of mentioned it to Jay. I was like, Jay, what do you think about this? And I kind of spit out the idea. Hey, what if all these famous rock stars that tragically died too soon, what if they didn't die? What if they faked their deaths to become secret agents? And that kind of was the, initial pitch, if you will. And Jay was like, let's do it. Let's do it. He was very excited about it. Jay, what did you say? I always love it when you share.
Yeah, Kyle and I have pitched a lot of ideas as far as each other, and it always came out of the impetus, which was, I think we can do this better than they did it, And it's a famous thing that everybody thinks and everybody feels, and we kind of had those moments where we'd come up with ideas like, why did they do this in this book, or why did they do this in this movie, or why didn't they, And Kyle has a particular gift for plot holes, and so we always talked about that stuff. And I remember Kyle pitching me this idea. I remember where I was and everything. And I paused on the phone for a little bit. And I think it made you nervous, right, man?
Oh, yeah. I was like, okay, maybe this is a bad idea. I don't know.
And I just remember saying very clearly, Kyle, that is not $1 million idea. That could be $1 billion universe. I mean, that is a idea in a world that would be a lot of fun to play around in.
Let's step back for just a second. What college did you guys meet at?
We went to Union University in Jackson, Tennessee. It's kind of midway between Memphis and Nashville.
I'm from Nashville. I'm a Nashville boy through and through. Kyle grew up towards the teenage years of his life, grew up in Bartlett, Tennessee, and Memphis. And so Jackson was kind of that halfway spot. And we met there his freshman year, my sophomore year. And we've kind of been thick as thieves ever since.
For sure.
That's cool. I know both areas really well. My wife's family is from Jackson, and we actually got married in Paris. It sounds impressive until you find out it's Paris, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And we've been there too.
That's okay. What majors did you guys study?
Yeah, I did broadcast communications with a minor in ethics. I wanted to be Jay Franze when I grew up. I wanted to have my own talk show. That's what I wanted to do with my life.
Luckily, you got off that path.
Well, that sweet spot between Johnny Carson and Arsenio Hall, I was all about that. So that's what I wanted to do with my life.
Nice.
That's awesome.
Kyle?
My major had nothing to do with what we've done here. My major actually pretty obscure major. Was Christian ethics is what I majored in college, minor in psychology.
Does any of that apply to what you do now?
It does. Yeah. I'm actually an editor now by trade. Didn't study English or any of that stuff. I'm more of a content editor. So it's the big picture, does this make sense? That's that sort of thing, working with authors to edit their stuff.
All right. So you get together, you pitch this idea. What was the next step after you pitched the idea?
Jay was the convincer. Jay is, more entrepreneurial. I'm the chicken. I'm like, oh, I don't know, man. I'm the guy that gets to the edge of the diving board and just waits. Someone's got to push me off before I get in the pool.
I've been shoving Kyle since 96, 97.
96. You've been pushing me in the pool since 1996. Yeah. He was like, hey, let's map this out, And so we met in person. We mapped a few chapters out, and I was skeptical at first, but I was excited about the idea. We got together, mapped out the first few chapters of the book. It was like, hey, I think we're onto something.
Well,
here.
Tell me about that
so
process.
Just kind of went from there.
Kyle is great about the idea, but when it comes to that jumping off the diving board, he's so hesitant. And so I pitched the idea of, hey man, let me just write the first 2 chapters and let's just see what happens. And if you like it and it gets you excited, then maybe you write a couple and let's just see what we've got. And so we put kind of some artificial deadlines on ourselves and said, okay, in 2 weeks, I'm going to give you these 2 chapters. And we had never written anything like this before. So we decided that we wanted to make it each chapter about 25 to 30 minutes long. We knew that a single space Times New Roman 12 font on one sheet of paper is 5 minutes. And so I tried to write about 6 pages just like that. And that was kind of where we started with a chapter. We knew some general ideas, some main characters, and some where we wanted to go generally. But there was just a whole bunch of stuff we just didn't know when we started. I wrote the first 2 chapters, and Kyle didn't hate it. And so he started writing some. And before it was over with, we made it to that whiteboard where we're like, okay, this is really fun. Who knows if anybody will ever read it, but we have to try. We have to do something. And so we started and we picked up, and I think we got the first 10 chapters out pretty quick before we hit a little bit of a dry spot, I think.
That's funny. It takes 5 minutes to read a page. Probably take me 20 minutes to read a page. I read so slow.
See, single space, 12 font. That's a lot of words.
So you're doing this. You're passing these chapters back and forth. How important is structure when it comes to the way you guys are writing together?
I would say structure is important, especially when you're talking about 2 authors, because you need to kind of know where you're going. You don't want to write something and then it be completely, oh, well, this doesn't go along with what he was writing. He took the story in a kind of a different direction in the previous chapter. So now I've already written this chapter and it doesn't fit. So, we had to kind of, take it a very structured process. So that's why we really did bite-sized chunks, maybe 4 to 6 chapters at a time to kind of keep it easy to do that. Like you said, we would exchange the chapters, would edit one another. We would fight the things we had to fight about. We would, review the things that needed to be reviewed or rewrite or, all that stuff. So much to the point that, we can probably remember who wrote the original chapter. But after both of us have worked on it back and forth several times for every chapter in the book, really, it's both and. We both wrote every chapter, even if we didn't sit down to write the initial draft. And
we also got on the whiteboard, and I know it's kind of weird because you're like, why would you put stuff on the whiteboard? Whiteboard's a whiteboard, right? It's blank. And so we took 4x6 sticky notes, and we'd write the chapter heading. We'd write the main idea of what we wanted to happen. And if there was any kind of sub thing or something where it needed to go a certain place in the plot, we kind of put these chapters up, and then we would throw our initials down on which ones were interesting to us. And early on, I was really good at action, and Kyle was really good at kind of the details of where a story is going and kind of plot development. And as we moved along, Kyle got excited about writing some action. I got excited about trying to figure out how to describe the inside of a plane hangar that I'd never been to in my life, and what that would feel like and what it would look like. And we learned quite a bit very early because we didn't know what we didn't know. And so we would write it. It made sense to us. And then you go back and read it and be like, oh, how many steps did it take for them to get to X or Y? How far away were they? Like, what does an airplane hangar actually look like at a private airfield? Like, are we crazy, in what we're saying? And sometimes it would be like, somebody moved 600 feet in 2 seconds. And you're like, wait a second, we gotta adjust this a little bit.
That's too funny. The reason I asked that question to begin with is I've been part of 4 books now. I've written 3 on my own and 1 with a partner, similar to what you guys have done. But mine were more educational style books, so there really wasn't story development, but it was still hard to coordinate. And you say, okay, you write this chapter, I'll write this chapter. But like you said, we bleed over, and you get into each other's work and you start making changes or corrections or thoughts and just adding things. So that relationship, did you guys have that collaborative relationship when it came to that, Kyle?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like we've had some people ask us, did it affect your friendship? Or, I would say it made us stronger friends because we learned how to communicate with one another in a way that we hadn't before. No, we didn't come in and kit gloves or anything, but we were honest with one another. But at the same time, we'd be specific. I don't really like this. Can we tweak it? Can we change it? Or, even down to the micro level, sometimes like that sentence, I don't like that sentence. Well, let's rewrite it. And the beauty of it was both of us, our goal was not who's going to get any kind of credit one over the other. It's completely 50-50, the whole thing. Our goal was let's write a great story. Right. And if a plot point that I'm really passionate about helps make it a great story, then we'll keep it in. But if it doesn't, then we'll delete it. We worked like that. We trusted one another. We built in our ability to, we feel like discern, what is good, what is bad. Is this a good story? Is this, is this helpful? Is this, all those things. So yeah, it was really important, that trust factor and the growth in, how we could work together to create it.
Jay, is he telling the truth there?
Mostly.
Oh.
I would also say that Kyle and I's background and our history and our work, we've done a lot of similar things that you've done as far as writing books. And that's a really tedious experience because, for one, you don't want your peers to pick apart your work and feel like you messed up in some way. And for what Kyle and I have done in our past, there's a lot of that where you're dealing with ancient text, or you're dealing with something so important that their structure is significant. And one of the things that was like a breath of fresh air for us was this idea of fiction. Because you can make up anything you wanted, when it came to the structure, there was a structure, but at the same time, if we wanted to invent whatever we could, you make up a person there, however you want that person to be. And so there was it was very liberating to be able to do that together. I think that as far as our relationship, when it came to working, you called us a couple earlier, and I would say we're friends. I don't know that we're a couple, but we did learn a lot about each other. And I think we learned a lot about ourselves, our insecurities, our fears, when it came to my pushing. And Kyle's called it gas and brakes before when we talked about this. I'm the gas, he's the brakes. There'd be times where he got really upset with my gas and I got really ticked off with his brakes because I'm like, why are you doing this? And so those conversations really did help us to become better friends. And I think early on, we were a little bit more protective of the thing that we hadn't invented yet. And so we'd write a chapter and there was this paragraph or this idea or this concept that one of us liked and the other hated. And we ended up spending days talking about this thing. And before it was over with, I'd go to Kyle and be like, hey, I really like this thing. He's like, okay, if it's important to you, let's put it in. Because it's fiction. I mean, it's okay. If you wanted this to happen, then we can make that happen. And so there was a lot of freedom for us in being able to do whatever we want, as long as it made sense to the story and the continuity of how things click together. And so, our chapters did bleed into each other in such a way where, like Kyle said, I don't know which sentences I wrote and which I didn't. Now I can remember some of the jokes I wrote, but other than that, I don't remember a lot of the actual who wrote what.
Kyle, my friend, he mentioned insecurities in hotspots. Apparently one of those is being a couple. So did you have any of these challenges working with somebody who didn't want to admit that he was being part of a couple with you? I mean, you guys are a couple of writers.
Yes, we are.
It's a creative
First
marriage.
step is to admit it, Jay. I just want to
A creative marriage. That's exactly
creative
right.
marriage. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you put, an art into the world, something you've written, something you've created, something you've made, you just want people to like it. You want people to appreciate it and enjoy it. And so there's a whole lot of insecurities of putting something out. And on top of that, the people in our story, the bulk of them were real people, and they had real stories, and a lot of them died in really tragic ways. In our story, we try to be sensitive to some of those things, but at the same time, fully lean into the fact that, man, it's fiction. This is not real. There's no way Elvis Presley could do any of this because, truthfully, he's not with us anymore. Regretfully,
I'm not ready to. I'm not ready to believe that yet. Just letting you know.
No, let's talk about that a little bit. Let's dive into the book just a little bit deeper here, and let's talk about the time frame. So, how important was the time frame to you guys when you were writing the book?
We have a friend who says no one should write a book before they're 40. And it has a little bit to do with just experience,
right,
knowledge, understanding.
Makes sense.
And for us, we wanted to be able to write something in a time that we were pretty confident we knew. And so 1999 for us was a very vivid part of our past and our history and our lives. I was just graduating college. Kyle was just about to graduate college. I was getting married. And there were just events that were happening in the world where everything was kind of coming alive in a lot of ways. And information was just flowing. And so because of that, we really thought that 1999 was a very interesting time to be able to launch this world because, in the alternative history that we built, this secret organization has been around since the 1800s. And so because of that, it could go in and out however we wanted it to go. And so 1999 was a great spot because it was these agents had been doing this for a little while. It was a very defined moment in time that kind of put everything together in such a way that we knew we could tell a story and we could be experts on a time and be able to kind of merge these people who didn't exist at that time. Like, what would it be like if Elvis is essentially 60 years old in 1999 and Elvis Presley's leading the DRS? Like, what can a 60-year-old do? And as we started this book in 2018, there were rumors about Harrison Ford doing Indiana Jones at like 80 years old. And you're like, well, I guess if Han Solo can do it, then Elvis can be 60 and be an action hero.
Well, that's a good point that you mentioned, Jay, that you're an expert on the time frame because you lived it, you experienced it. You were getting married, you were graduating, you were going through all these life experiences as well. How did those affect the stories of your portions of the book?
I mean, I would say our lives are very much kind of reflected in the book. In the early, one of the early chapters, our protagonist, who's not a real person, his name's Cole Denton. He's the real only fictional character, the main character. But his apartment described is exactly what my apartment was like. I mean, we described his bachelor apartment the exact way that my bachelor apartment looked like it in that time, with roommate and everything. The way we had our TV set up, and and the almost monk style living quarters that we had, and just like a bed, a handful of shirts in the closet, that sort of thing. So it very much reflected, what my life looked like. It being I was not married at that time, what it looked like. So it definitely came into play in our story.
So your stuff is definitely coming into play. Jay, how about you? What kind of things made it into the book?
Yeah, so there's a nice little element of romance in our story. And you've got...
see, this is a guy that doesn't want to talk about being a couple, and now he's talking about romance. All right, go ahead, Jay.
My hypocrisy knows no bounds. We wrote this love story, and the way the interactions are, the things that happen, the conversations that are had, it may not be exactly what we experienced, but it is very similar. And so dialogue, and also Cole Denton at the beginning of our story is searching for purpose. He's searching for connection. He's searching for family. And I think that's been a big part of our lives. I mean, I think everybody wants to experience some type of purpose. They want to do something that's important. I think the difference is, I think people have dreams. They just rarely actually chase them.
No, I see that every day. I mean, I think that's very important. Kyle, when you guys are putting the book together, do you feel like this is chasing a dream?
Man, absolutely. I think when you start off with a task like writing a book, even though we wrote it together, you think to yourself, can we really do this? Can we really get this thing to the finish line? And, even though there's two of us to share the work, so to speak, there's still some fear. And, I think Jay mentioned in the beginning, our passion for entertainment and movies and, and TV and stuff. And we always just sort of looked at those things and went like, man, I'd love to do that. And so it's kind of been a dream to create something like that people could enjoy, that takes people and puts them into another universe, another world that may resemble ours, but it's not. It's it's imaginary, and it's just kind of a dream. And truthfully, we wrote a book because we didn't know how to write a movie. We'd love to have written a movie, but we had no idea. And it's easier to get a book made than to get a movie made. So let's just write a book. So we wanted to put something in the world, and it definitely was a dream come true to make it happen.
We had two very specific goals. One was to be published by a publisher. That was important to us for some reason. We wanted to give away the bulk of our
give away all my money.
Yeah, we wanted to give away the bulk of our funds. And the other one is tightly related. We wanted to break even. So those are kind of the big goals that we had for this book. But also, we wanted to tell a story that was completely and totally fun. There's just not much of that in the world right now. And I wouldn't say there's much of an agenda to our story. I would say that our story is just pure
fun,
ridiculous fun. That was fun for us. It was a release for us. The bulk of when this book was completed was during the pandemic. And for us, it was a wonderful escape. And it was a time where we could dream a little bit and had time to, think about an alternative world that pulled us out of where we were at the time. And so it was a lot of fun to us. It was a dream that we've always had. And it mattered to us to make sure that the story was airtight. It made sense, and we wanted you to be surprised. We didn't want you to know who the antagonist was, or
Right.
the not the protagonist. I don't know what you want to call him.
Anti-hero.
Yeah, we don't want to call him the bad guy, right, Kyle?
Not a bad guy. He sees the world through a certain lens, or she sees the world through a certain lens.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine. I mean, you guys mentioned it not being a movie, but it's a lot easier to turn a book into a movie, so there's still hope. But you mentioned a couple things there I want to touch on. Jay, real quick, you mentioned humor and you mentioned writing jokes earlier. So was humor a big part of your writing process, and can you give us an example of a piece that made it into the book?
Man, that's a good question. Kyle, you be thinking about that as well.
Sure.
I think that one of the jokes that I really loved to write was, so Cole is a tech star. He is a famous technology star that is an up and comer in the world. And in 1999, you had the Zuckerbergs and you had the Elon Musk and you had the Bill Gates and the Steve Jobs, for that matter. They were changing the world. They were the most influential people in the world at that time. And so we created a version of that person, and that person got to be the lens through which we entered into this universe. And there's a particular chapter where Cole is about to go visit the Netherworld, which is the home base for the DRS. And if I'm giving away too much, Kyle, just shoot me, I guess. But
well, I find the mute button.
Yeah, but Jimi Hendrix is flying the plane, and Cole begins asking all these questions about who is in the DRS and who is he going to meet and what's going on. And so, there's a list of about 20 or 30 things that he rattles off that I just found the funniest thing ever. Like, how big is Biggie? Does Biggie like hugs? And, you just go down this list. And, I loved thinking. And I got to say, we probably wrote the joke, I see dead people, 600 times in this book. We had to edit out because we just thought it was so funny. And just little things like that aren't knee slappers per se, but it's just like, what would you do if you were in that moment? What would it be like for you to experience? And you'd have a million questions. And some of the questions would be the dumbest questions ever. Some of them would be pretty important. And to be able to mix the serious and the significance of trying to save the world with just, some cavalier, let's have fun, these guys were rock stars, man. They love to take nothing seriously.
True statement. Kyle, your version.
Yeah, humor's absolutely important because, the premise is so ridiculous. We weren't trying to write a piece of, Russian literature, we weren't trying to do something that's weighty and heavy. We took it seriously. We had a lot of fun. We created what we feel like is a good story, but we wanted it to be fun. We wanted it to be funny, and something you've already asked about a little bit, but I think was so fun for us is to put real stories from our college days, some of our college friends, to put some of those real people in the story in a kind of a wink sort of way to some of
Easter
our friends.
egg.
Easter eggs, yeah, for sure. And so there's a couple of jokes that we didn't have to write them because we lived them. Some things that people actually said. Some back and forth, some exchanges from some friends of ours in college had. So we just put it directly in the story because we thought, it's funny.
Now they're going to want credit.
Yeah, they probably will.
And they probably will want a little bit of credit.
Especially if it gets made into a movie.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
If it does get made into a movie, who do you want the actors to be?
We've got a long list. Yeah, we got a long list. We spent a lot of time thinking about it.
Do you really?
Yeah, for Elvis Presley, I think we had a lot of fun ideas. One of the things that we thought about was a lot of people have already played these movie stars at different times and different roles. I think one of Kurt Russell's first roles that he ever played in a movie was Elvis in a TV movie. And so
really?
For us, we kind of thought, what if we started there? What if Kurt Russell was Elvis Presley? I brought up kind of George Clooney, like an Ocean's 11 take on Elvis Presley. Kyle, you've got a great one for this.
Man, for Elvis, my dream casting would be Robert Downey Jr. because if you watch that guy when he's not playing Iron Man, he's doing an accent or a voice, or he's, putting a wig on, he's doing something that kind of makes him, not himself. And that guy could do the Elvis voice without making it too cartoonish, I need a jelly donut, whatever. Like he could pull it off. And so that'd be my dream casting, would be Robert Downey Jr. as Elvis Presley.
We talked about for Jimi Hendrix 2 options, right? I feel like the obvious one, which was Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx, super talented musician. Jamie Foxx can do anything, and that age time might be just right as well. A little bit different body build, but not far off. But Kyle, you had a great one just simply for the reason I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, Andre 3000's already played Jimi Hendrix in a biopic from about 10 or 15 years ago or so. He'd be fantastic as Jimi Hendrix, I think. And I actually saw a picture of him recently. And he's kind of gray, I hadn't seen him in so long. I was like, man, he could pull it off. He'd look just like him. And we're assuming that Jimmy got gray as he got older. That's our assumption.
We talked about for John Lennon, was it Jude Law? Is that right?
Jude Law. Yeah. Jude Law. A little too handsome, but still he could pull off the English thing, the glasses. Yeah,
absolutely. And then for Jerry Garcia, who do we say?
Yeah, Jack Black. He would be perfect.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's got the big beard now, too, or he has had the big beard.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite of this, though, is Val Kilmer as Jim Morrison. He played Jim Morrison in The Doors, 91, when that movie came out.
Show off.
Hey, it's my thing. It's my thing.
I know.
But if you read our story, you'll see that Jim Morrison, he says one word in the whole story, and we did that intentionally because Val Kilmer had throat cancer, so he can't speak very well anymore. That they wrote that into the Top Gun movie that came out a couple years ago. So we thought, man, wouldn't it be cool if Val could play Jim Morrison again? So let's play to his strength, his acting, and let's since he can't speak very well, let's just not have him say anything. So that's kind of one of our dream scenarios.
A vow of silence. Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
Was there anybody else that was like important?
I mean, Renee Zellweger has always wanted to play Janis Joplin, and I thought she'd be really good as Janis Joplin.
She's awesome.
That's great. I forgot about that one. That's good.
She is awesome. I love her.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the genres of music. Anything other than rock or folk?
We've gotten some pushback in some of our social media, not too badly, but some of who we have defined as rock star. And for us, it's less about the genre of music they make; it's more about the spirit. So yeah, we've got in our story is also Tupac and Christopher Wallace, aka Biggie Smalls. So we've got some rappers.
Well, rock stars can be more just as much personality as anything else.
That's right. Yeah. Jay, you want to add a few?
We've got some country singers, country artists.
Give me an example.
I don't know if I want to.
Jay, this is a talk show. We have to talk.
Yeah. And I listened in one of your podcasts that you don't actually read books. And so, like, you're not going to know about it anyway. So, I mean, I guess I should tell you.
This is true. It's a true statement. I mean, today released an episode of my daughter, my 9-year-old daughter, came on the show because she got to perform with the ballet here in town, the Cincinnati Ballet. So she said now that she's professional, she wanted to come on the show. So we did an episode with her coming on the show, and she mentions not liking to read. And I said, well, I don't blame you. I don't like to read either. And I got a whole bunch of comments of people telling me, what do you mean you don't read? This isn't the thing to tell a kid who's going to school and all these things. I'm like, well, I don't like to read because it challenges me. It's very hard for me to read. It takes me longer than the average person to read something. That's why I was saying your 5-minute page would probably take me 15, 20 minutes to read it if I want to retain any of it.
Yeah.
But I'm killer at audiobooks because I can hear it and it just makes sense. So my workaround, sir, is I now have my computer read the text pages to me.
Hey, no judgment.
So, yes.
No, we're working on an audiobook in the next couple of months. That's kind of one of our next goals to get that out. So that'll be just for you, Jay. We'll take care of it.
I appreciate that,
Kyle, do you want to share any country artists we got?
Oh, no, we're back on this. I tried to let it go.
Oh, okay. Sorry, man. Sorry about that.
you guys are there in Nashville.
Continuity. Continuity is what we care about, Jay. And
that's
so,
true. I appreciate that. Makes editing a whole lot easier. You guys are living there in Nashville. You got to give me one country artist. One.
Hank Williams, the senior, not the junior. Hank Williams, senior.
I'll take senior. All right. So the book itself is released, and you have chosen to seek out publishing. Now, you've self-published in the past. What was the decision behind seeking publishing now?
Yeah, I've self-published a book before, and I did it in about 8 weeks, and it was awesome. I got to pick the design. I got to pick everything about it, how many words, whatever. And you work with the online site that sells books, and it's easy. And I was able to sell, almost 1,000 books of my own. And I made a lot more money than I'm probably going to make on this book, just simply because, I got the most of it. But at the same time, I was able to sell it to the people that I knew. And we had a really strong desire to try to get this book out into places that we couldn't. The idea of getting a book in Barnes and Noble was something for us that we just thought was the coolest. And so I got to see that recently. You make literally tens and tens of dollars making books. And for us, there was just some significance to this story. We felt like was a more commercially viable story than other things. And we felt like a publisher could maybe open us up to doors that we aren't able to open. At the same time, though, man, it is a murderous process to get a book, to even get a publisher to pay attention. I mean, it took us years. And then we kind of stumbled into it, to be honest, because we had done all the things. We had done all the emails. We had worked. We didn't go to one of the shows where you're basically, it's like speed dating for books. Right. They've got those things where you go do that. Like, we didn't make it to that, but we were close. Like, we were about to go do that grind just because we wanted to make it happen. And fortunately for us, we kind of stumbled into it with a relationship that Kyle had.
Yeah, we met some people from Morgan James Publishing, who is our publisher. It was one of those things where, a friend of a friend kind of situation. My boss at the time knew some of the publishers over at Morgan James and kind of connected us, put us together. And sure enough, the president and founder of Morgan James Publishing was actually in Nashville for a conference, and we were able to sit down with him in a hotel and pitch our story. And we spent an hour with him, and we didn't have a book deal after that hour, but it wasn't but a week or two later that we had a deal to get the book published. He was that excited about our story, and they had a process by which we had to go through and be approved by their board of directors and so forth. And so it was really happened very fast. After a couple of years of striking out, we had an agent for about 5 minutes.
5.5
minutes. and got a lot of no's, barked up a lot of trees, asked friends of friends of friends of friends, hey, do you know anybody in the publishing industry? How can we get this thing published? And so it kind of came together very, very fast, and it was really felt very providential and fun.
I'd add a little detail that it came by very, very fast after several years of working to make it happen.
Right, exactly.
Additionally, we got a little bit of a verbal excitement from Morgan James, but they had this process where Morgan James is a boutique publisher. They do about 200 copies of books a year that they produce. And among those, it's mostly trade books. It's mostly entrepreneurial, do-it-yourself kind of books. And they do 12 books a year, 12 or 15 books a year that's just fiction. And so a little bit of a tough process to kind of get in there. They have this board that votes on it, and then they run it through AI. And so we got this 15, 20-page report about our book, what Skynet thought about our book, I guess. And so they, they tell us if it was going to be a hit or not, how it lined up with other bestsellers in the genre, what our characters were like, and if the development of the story matched the development of a blockbuster book, and all these things that we got to look at. The flow, the dialogue versus narrative, dialogue action versus exposition, all these different things where they filtered it through this AI, and then Bob's your uncle, here's the deal if you want it. So that was really, really interesting for us. And there were pieces of that process that we never really expected. I never expected Skynet to be the one that would approve, the Dead Rock Stars.
Well, that's pretty cool. And again, first, let's go back to what you said earlier, Jay, about artwork. You were talking about your previous book and having total say in everything, including the artwork. So what was the process for the artwork for this book?
Kyle, how honest do you want me to be here?
Yeah, be honest, man.
Okay. Morgan James is a wonderful publisher. And one of the things that they're great about is they allow us to keep a lot of the things that are important to us for us. They own the publishing rights, but other than that, we can do kind of what we want. And so we went through a process with them, with their graphic designers and their artists that made a book cover. And it personally offended me, on a deep level. And so I ended up calling a favor in from my sister-in-law, who is a graphic designer in New York and is just amazingly gifted. And in a couple weeks, she was able to produce for us this cover that we have now that's more illustrative, and it's there's little secret details in all of it. So if you look at that book cover, there's a few little things in there that are interesting. If the word on a novel, it's written in computer code.
Yep.
The font for the rock stars is a very specific kind of thing. And the dead part of it, the very top there, the dead, that's more of a 90s hacker font. And then the rock stars is more of that traditional font. If you go up to the skeletons in the front, you'll notice that the skeletons have similar characteristics of people that you might know. Mm-hmm. That's Buddy Holly with his classic horn-rimmed glasses and his guitar that's his color, and he's playing right-handed. On the right side over there, you've got Kurt Cobain there. Kurt took a lot of pictures in those glasses in different colors, and that is the color of his guitar. And so
I would not win at this game, sir.
And if you look up at our little logo there in the middle, if you are a fan of Mr. Presley, you'll recognize his a similar lightning bolt with the three initials that where he puts it. He's got TCB, he's taking care of business in a flash, and so we've got our DRS up there, and so they're just little hints to all different pieces in the story.
Well, that's really cool, and I love all the Easter eggs. I'm really glad you guys were able to make that work out. Kyle, let's go back to the deal for a second, though. What made the deal enticing to you?
Yeah. Well, what made it enticing is that they said yes.
There you go.
They said we will publish this book for you. Like we said earlier, our goals were we wanted to be published. We wanted to, put it into the world. And the simple fact that they would do that, and we felt good about the reputability. They're not like Penguin House or one of the big five, the major publishers, but they're a strong, reputable publisher, and they've produced
some bestsellers,
particularly in the business and trade side. But we want to blaze that trail for them in the fiction brand for their company. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't about money. It wasn't about this big fancy deal. It was simply the fact that they believed in our story, they believed in us, and they gave us a chance, and they gave us a lot of freedom. Most publishers would not let us pick our cover. Now, of course, they had to approve it, but we published the cover that we wanted.
We also own the rights to the cover art, which is very unique for publishers.
Yeah. Some of their story is their founder published a book and he was very disillusioned by the process because once he got it in his hands, it had been edited so much and he felt like it wasn't his book anymore. So when he created Morgan James, he was like, I want to publish the books that the authors want to create. And so there was very little editorial oversight. And what I mean by that is that not that we just turned in a sloppy book. Right. No, it had to be professionally, perfectly edited, but they didn't come in and say, oh, we don't like this plot point, or we don't like this character, or we don't like what you've done with this or that. They let us, publish the book that we wanted to publish. And we're really grateful for that.
They also are an author-friendly publisher when it comes to rights. We own everything that we've created. They own the publishing rights to this book, but we own the movie rights. We own all the other pieces of this, the artwork, the characters, all the different things. And so first-time book deals, they're not like that. They basically clean you out. And so we really liked the freedom that they gave us, and we liked the way that they worked with us. We got to tell our story.
I experienced the same thing, and I relate it back to the music industry. And I said, okay, I'm going to self-publish because I want to have control over the book, like you said, over every aspect of the book. And what ended up happening is I was teaching at the local engineering college, and the students started reading the book. So the school made it part of the curriculum. And then neighboring schools and even schools in Canada started putting it in their curriculum. So once, just like anything else, once it has momentum and starts making traction and people are buying the book, then publishing companies started just showing up.
Just like music.
Right. Now they want to, we can help you. We can do this. We can do that. No, well, what can you offer me that I can't do myself at this point? So that was that battle of back and forth. So I can definitely understand how all that works. But Kyle just mentioned editing. So Jay, what was your experience in the editing of the book?
We didn't know what we didn't know, and we didn't know what we were doing. And so for us, when you don't know what to do, you steal from everybody else. And so we went and looked at Harry Potter's first book, J.K.'s first book, the very first Harry Potter, and it was roughly, I think, 60,000 words or something like that, Kyle. 75,000 words.
Yeah.
And so we had this goal of writing around 75,000 words. It sounded impossible to us. We had never done anything like that before. And when it was all said and done, we had 100,000 words that we'd written for this story. We hired a content editor, and I wasn't very familiar with content editing, which I think technically is your job now, Kyle, right? That's what you do?
That's what I do. That's what I do for a living now. Yep.
But when we started this, it was like, okay, content editor, what does that mean? And it was a huge part of our process, because to have another set of eyes that would come in and begin to whittle down important parts of the story to its essence, we went from 100,000 words to 92,000 words. So we chopped out 2 chapters, more or less, of the book that we didn't need, superfluous, extra, like that. Too many words that said the same thing. We kind of... he was able to help us get to the core of what we needed to say and how we needed to say it. He also was really good about making sure that the story flowed from point to point. So for us, the content editing was really important because it helped to, I wouldn't say streamline the story, but I guess just make it more effective.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, editing is something I used to do in the music industry. It's something I do now with these shows. I don't want to take away somebody's creativity, but what I want to do is maximize the good portion of it and make it consumable. And I think editing has a lot to do with how we consume things.
I also think that people can be their worst enemies. And so it's one of the nice things about Kyle and I working together. We kind of were able to submit to each other in such a way where if I had an idea that I really liked, Kyle had a chance to kind of explain it to me in a way that I didn't think about. And so we got to do a lot of that on our own and then to have David Webb come in, who was our content editor. David really kind of was able to clarify a lot of things that we've read the chapters 100 times. And so after you've read everything, it's like, you don't see what's there, what's not there. And he did. A fresh set of eyes was a really big deal. That collaborative process, I think, can really make a book exponentially better.
Jay, one of my favorite editing stories with David was when we argued for several minutes on text over what type of suplex was being used by two characters in a certain point in the story. Somebody comes and suplexes somebody. We're like, well, is it a German suplex or is it a belly to back suplex? You know, if you know anything about wrestling, you know, kind of some of these terms. If you don't,
I got to tell you, Jay, I completely checked out of that conversation because Kyle and David had lots of those conversations. And I was like, I think we're in good hands.
You guys
I think
can
they
take care of
figure
this.
out what kind of suplex needs to be there.
And just because I have to know now, which one did we settle on?
Oh gosh, I can't remember. Honestly,
Kyle, come on.
I think it was a belly to belly suplex. I think that's what it ended up being, where you hold a guy like this and you flip him over, throw him on the ground. I think that's where we ended.
And then you do this right afterwards. Right. You give a flex.
That's what I do with my kids. Yeah. I grab them belly to belly, hurl them down, and get up and just feel like a man, and then realize, she's 3 feet tall and she's only 9. But that's okay.
Great.
Jay, you mentioned earlier the report that AI has given you. Can you tell me a little bit more about the report and what that process was like?
It was really scary because you've written a book and you think it's a pretty baby, and then it's getting compared to other babies that actually are pretty, and you kind of think to yourself, like, what have I done? And I remember being very nervous opening it because it didn't just give you the highlights, but it would talk about, like, it gave us a paragraph or two, maybe even a page, I don't remember. It gave us a paragraph or two about every character that we wrote in the story. And it compared the differentiations in their personality, their dialogue, and the significance of kind of where they fit in the story. There were the flow, you know, there's a literal graph between action and dialogue. And then over that graph was, like, I don't know, bestsellers, New York Times bestsellers, and there's the typical flow that they all have. Well, there was our story lining up with it, and you start to look at it and go, okay, is this good or bad, Kyle? Like, did we write the same story as everybody else, or, like, is this saying that it's good? And so you had to kind of work through some of the particular details, but I think that our story came back as, like, having 72% or 75% of commonalities with bestsellers in fiction.
It was something like that. But the thing I remember most was that graph. And, like, you know, it brought me back to, you know, 10th grade English or whatever. It talks about the rising action and the falling action and the, you know, the peaks and the crests of, you know, of the plot points of a story. And, you know, when it showed that wave of, this is how best-selling books, this is the wave that their story takes. And when ours was exactly the same, well, very similar, I can't say exactly, but it was very similar. We were like, we didn't know to do that. We just did, you know, in our passion for stories and storytelling, you know, we thought, well, this is when things need to pick up, or this is when they need to slow down, or this is when we needed to take a time out and develop this character more. This is when we need to really jump back into the story that we haven't said much about, you know, so all those things that kind of played into the story, we did honestly instinctively, not because we knew what we should be doing. So it's like what Jay said lots of times, you know, already, we didn't know what we didn't know. We just sort of went on instinct. And so it was just really neat to get a confirmation of, your instincts were correct as it compares to, you know, other works of fiction. I don't remember the books that it compared it to, but there were 2 or 3 that compared our book to, and we were like, whoa, that's awesome. Really cool.
We also, I guess I'm going to see if I can put this all together to kind of help make sense a little bit. But Jay, you're a music guy, particularly production. I recently purchased Rick Rubin's book, and I've kind of been going through it, different pieces of it. And recently, a friend of mine, my daughter is recording music right now, and we're getting close to finishing her album. And so I've been doing this book, and my 18-year-old daughter's been doing this music. And there's been a lot of creativity happening at the Watson house lately. And you can understand that with your burgeoning career in the ballerina world, the ballet. It only gets more fun, by the way, man. It only gets more fun. But someone sent me an Instagram reel of Rick Rubin talking about creating art. And I think it's really important for this particular piece when it comes to AI, when it comes to the technology behind it. This shouldn't surprise you, but Rick's point was there's a reason why so many bad movies have been made in the world. And it's because they didn't make the movies for them. They made it for commerce. Right. So they made a story because they thought that most people would like it, but they didn't necessarily make something that they liked. And so for Kyle and for I don't want to necessarily put words in your mouth, Kyle, but we wrote a story that we loved. We wrote a story that we could stand behind. We went through and looked at the chapters and we're like, okay, there's a piece missing in here that it doesn't make sense, that we've got to go back and we've got to explain this. And so we moved chapters around because it was what mattered to us. What mattered to us was a really great story, a story that was airtight in the sense of it at least was plausible or it made sense and it clicked together and somebody could at least understand the logic and why we chose what we did. Whether they agreed with it or not, it's a completely different topic. But for us, we told a story that we wanted to tell. And it was a really nice added bonus that it matched up with these other things. But that wasn't why we did it. Like, we did it because we wanted to make something we were proud of, and we got to do that.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
You mentioned there even again that the commonalities on that report between your book and other books and whether or not that was good or bad. And I think it's good to know that you have things in common with the other books. It'd be different if it was saying your book is similar to these other books, but the commonalities is the way things work. Things have an intro, things have an outro, and then they have the ebbs and flows that go between the two. So I think having those things in common is good. But Kyle, you mentioned something earlier too that made me think. You've got AI and it is running your book through this process, and it's telling you the differences between the characters, and it's telling you, everything that an editor would typically do. So do you feel like there's a disconnect now, a little bit of a loss between having a human editor versus a AI editor?
I think if you relied on AI editing solely, like this is the only process by which you'll do editing, there'd be a lot lost. Because AI, while it's smart, it's artificially smart. It's not creative in and of itself. Right. AI can't come close to the capacity of the human creativity. All it can do is follow a pattern or an algorithm or say, this is how it should be. And creativity is when you say, this is how it should be, but this is how I want to do it. And the reason I want to do it this way is because I think it's better. And it may not be better at the start, but it'll be better by the end. And so, I think it would be if we only used AI. I think that'd be tragic. You need that human component to come in and say, one of the things that our editor really helped us with big time is how do we differentiate between the characters? If you just read a sentence of dialogue that someone's saying, how are you going to know who's saying that? So how can you switch it up? How can you know that John Lennon's speaking or Jimi Hendrix is speaking or Elvis Presley speaking? Well, we listened to a whole bunch of YouTube interviews and we read interviews and we read books about these guys and we thought, I think I can capture in the ballpark, in the neighborhood of maybe how they spoke, how they thought, how they processed, words they would say, words they wouldn't say. I
think that's the key.
We didn't nail. Yeah, we didn't nail a bullseye. There's no way you can nail a bullseye. They were dynamic human people. I think we got in the neighborhood with most of our characters. I hope at least.
Well, I think you're dead on. I mean, I think the personality comes in the words that they choose and how they choose to speak and phrase things. So I know you guys are supporting the book. So what's it feel like for you guys now to do book signings?
Oh, I feel like an actor. I feel like, wait, I'm the one who should be standing in line getting someone else to autograph the book that they wrote.
Imposter syndrome for sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I mean, you guys go into a bookstore now, you sit there at a table and people are coming up to meet you guys. At what point does it start feeling real, or does it?
Thankfully for us, a good bit of the book signing has been friends and people that care about us or family. And so it's been a soft opening for those kind of things. We haven't done a ton of really, really public things. And most of the feedback that we're getting from people that we don't know is coming in the form of a review or an email or something like that. And it's a much more palatable experience. It's a little safer in a sense, than out there, standing naked in front of everyone and letting them judge you. we get to do that in private, I guess.
It is not Topless Tuesday.
one way to
Tune
say
in
it.
tomorrow for Topless Tuesday.
Yeah.
Kyle, how do you feel about the signing process?
Yeah, it's really, really fun, because again, like Jay said, so much to this point has been in the lead up to the pre-launch, and then in the early days of books only been out 2 months. It has been friends and family who have just come behind us and supported us and loved us and said, "Hey, we are here for you." Watching, my cousin-in-law at one of our book signings walk out with 10 books. He's like, "I got Christmas for everybody," like that. It feels so good to be affirmed in that way. And then, Jay made this allusion earlier. When you have your own child, you look at it and you think, "Oh, this is the cutest baby in the world," and people will lie to you if it's not. And so we have created this book, which is like our child, and we think it's awesome. We think it's so beautiful, and it's really, really fun and encouraging when others say it's cute as well. And we've had enough at this point where we feel like people aren't just being nice to us anymore. We've got some genuine feedback from people who say, "Guys, this is really good. We really enjoyed this." And that just feels really good and really affirming. And I know there's not everybody's going to love it. This isn't for everybody. This is a pop culture laden story, but we feel like it's so much fun, and it's something that people will enjoy. And so we're just trying our hardest to get it out there into the world and expose it to as many people as we can.
That is really
I've
cool.
had a lot of people that surprise me would come up to me and say, "I don't read books. I haven't read a book in 20 years." And
Is he throwing it back at me again, Kyle?
I'm heading that way. I'm heading that way.
Go ahead.
But let's not spoil the ending here,
Oh,
Jay.
sorry. Go ahead. Now you sound like my wife.
One of our close friends is not a reader. He doesn't read, and he took the time to read the book, finish it, like he actually finished it, and then, told us about how much he loved it. And it wasn't like, "Really great job, guys. I'm so glad you chased your dream." It wasn't that. It was much different than that. It was much more, "Man, I was worried this was going to happen, and I didn't know this, and I tried to figure this out." And so those kind of things were everything we could ever hope for. We got an email a couple days ago from a person that we've never met before that was writing their top 10 list of books that they read in 2023. And we made the list, and it was amongst a lot of other very strange different books, and to not know them, to not know where it came from, and to see it out there in such a way where they really, really enjoyed the story. That's everything for us. We want people to have fun. I had a guy who came up to me and said, "I have not read a book in 20 years. I hate reading, and I read this book, and I read it in a couple weeks, and it was amazing." And for me, I feel like if Byron Boyd can do that, then you can too, Jay. You can do it too.
There you go. I waited for it. No, you are right, sir. And like I said, I find my workarounds. I've got my phone and my computer to read things to me. It's great. It's sad. I even have my phone read like emails that are like a paragraph long. I'll have my phone read it to me. I'm just that bad of a reader.
I don't know, man. I think that you figured out how to consume information and consume knowledge and details. I listened to several biographies through the Audible so that I could kind of get an idea of who these people were. I listened to probably, 2,000 pages on Elvis Presley because he was significant to our story. I spent time learning about the Beatles. You know about these people. You have an idea of a caricature of them, but who were they? What motivated them?
Did you watch the 6-hour documentary?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We got up.
That's funny. Well, you both mentioned friends and family at these signings and everything. We do this thing here we call Unsung Heroes, where we take a minute to shine the light on somebody who's supported you behind the scenes. Is there anybody that you'd like to support or shine a little light on, Kyle?
Yeah, one of our biggest cheerleaders is one of our best friends from college, a guy named John Carroll. He's the unofficial mayor of Memphis, Tennessee. If you've ever heard of the Choose 901 campaign, he's the mastermind behind that. But he has been such an amazing ally and friend and cheerleader for us in so many ways. And we just love him and are so grateful for his for his help and his friendship. He's an expert on so many things that we're clueless about, and we'll call him or text him, and he'll help us out. And he's just helped us in so many ways. So shout out to John Carroll in Memphis, Tennessee.
Very cool. Jay, sir?
Yeah, we had probably 4 or 5 hosts that were willing to open up their home and provide things for us to be able to invite people. And there was a mutual friend, a guy that I went to high school with, and one of Kyle's closer friends named Brandon Palmore, who he would hate the fact that we even mentioned his name because he wanted to help us. But he kind of helped position and frame our understanding a little bit of what we were doing. He helped us to understand that our friends wanted to help us chase our dream. And so we changed our conversation when we heard that, because it became about helping us achieve our dream for our friends and family, and not just, hey, buy our book and see if you like it or not and tell your friends. Like, it was a much different perspective. But I mean, he went and got it's Nashville. So, I mean, he asked, I guess, a couple waiters or waitresses, and he found a singer, and, he came to their house, and he took some of the original songs that these artists in our story sang, and he made it a little acoustic country flair on some of them. And he would play one of the songs from the book, and then we would get up and talk about it. And there were a ton of people there. And, we were able to sell a bunch of merchandise that night, but it wasn't really because, they were there because they'd heard good things about the book.
Right.
They were there to support our dream. And without somebody like Brandon Palmore, I don't think that we would have ever put that together.
Very cool. I like that. I like the idea of doing things like that, the alternative or different avenues of marketing things, and it becomes more of an experience, and you get to share that experience with people who then become lifelong fans. So with that in mind, what's next for you guys?
We want to continue to get this thing out into the world and get this thing exposed to as many people, but we would like to ultimately write a trilogy of stories in this particular line of stories.
Classic 80s kids, man. We got to hit a trilogy.
I love it.
Because every story needs a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? And that's the beauty of a trilogy. You have a beginning, you have a middle, you have an end. But all that to say, we want a tight, compact beginning, middle, and end story, and we're really excited to get to that in the coming years. It'll be a while, but in the coming years, we will write book 2 and 3.
A big thanks to Jay and Kyle for taking the time to share the stories with us. And thank you for taking the time to hang with me here. As always, I really do appreciate it. Please follow, share, and connect on all the socials. I would really love to hear from you. You can do that and find the links to everything mentioned over at jayfranze.com/episode 49. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to The Jay Franze Show. Make sure you visit us at jayfranze.com. Follow, connect, and say hello. This episode has been brought to you by VR Knives, your source for 100% custom knives made by a true rock star. So, if you're in the market for a new piece of art, reach out to VR Knives. 407-421-5528. 407-421-5528.